This isn't about pleasure. It's about the secret men never say out loud. And once you see it, intimacy will never look the same again. What if everything you've been told about male desire is backwards? What if, in the most intimate moments, men aren't chasing power, control, or performance, but something far more fragile and human? Beneath the surface of desire lives a silent need. To be accepted without armor, to belong without proving, to surrender without losing dignity. This isn't opinion, it's a psychological truth hidden in plain sight, drawing from the symbolic understanding of the unconscious explored by Carl Jung. This video reveals what men are really seeking when intimacy becomes quiet, slow, and vulnerable. Not techniques, not validation, but a place where they don't have to be strong all the time, a place where presence matters more than performance. Once you understand this, everything shifts. How you read desire, how you interpret vulnerability, and how deep connection is actually created. This isn't about sex. It's about belonging, power, surrender, and the emotional forces shaping relationships without ever being spoken. Stay with me, because what you're about to see changes the rules of intimacy completely. You need to understand this right away. What looks like confidence in intimacy is often a quiet confession. When you strip away the noise, the performance, the myths around masculinity, you see something far more human. In moments of deep intimacy, desire isn't just hunger, it's language. It's the unconscious speaking when words fail. You're not watching strength on display, you're witnessing vulnerability asking for acceptance. This is why intimacy hits so deep. It touches belonging, not ego. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Think of it like this. A man in intimacy is like someone lowering their voice in a crowded room. He's not trying to dominate the space. He's trying to be heard by one person. Beneath desire lives a hope that says, "See me without armor." That's the real pull. Pleasure matters, sure, but acceptance matters more. Without it, pleasure feels hollow, like applause in an empty theater. This is where connection replaces performance and intimacy becomes real instead of rehearsed. You can see this dynamic everywhere if you pay attention. The man who's obsessed with proving himself is usually the one least at peace. The one who slows down, who surrenders urgency, is often seeking serenity more than conquest. That surrender isn't weakness, it's trust, and trust only appears when the unconscious senses safety. This is pure symbolism in motion, desire as a bridge between who you pretend to be and who you actually are. Here's something practical to notice in real life. Watch how someone behaves when there's no rush, no scorekeeping, no exchange implied. When intimacy becomes spacious, the need for belonging surfaces. That's where masculinity softens without disappearing. Strength doesn't vanish, it recalibrates. It becomes grounded, present, human. If you've ever felt more connected after silence than after words, you already understand this truth on a visceral level. And this is where Carl Jung quietly steps into the room. He understood that the unconscious doesn't argue, it reveals. Desire is one of its favorite messengers. What's confessed here isn't lust. It's a longing to belong without pretending. And once you grasp that, you start to sense that this confession doesn't end here. It opens the door to something even deeper, where control quietly gives way to surrender. You've probably been taught, directly or indirectly, that control is the core of masculinity. Be decisive, be firm, don't hesitate, don't bend. But intimacy tells a very different story, and it tells it quietly. In moments that truly matter, the masculine longing isn't to dominate. It's to surrender without being diminished. Not collapse, not disappear, but rest. Like setting down a heavy backpack you didn't realize was crushing your spine until the moment it's off. Surrender here doesn't mean weakness. It's closer to what happens when you finally exhale after holding your breath for too long. The man who allows himself to surrender in intimacy is doing something radical. He's choosing presence over power. He's saying without words, I don't need to win here. And that choice carries enormous emotional weight, because outside that space, he's rarely allowed to let go. Think about how pressure works in everyday life. At work, you're expected to lead, decide, perform. In social settings, you're supposed to project confidence, competence, direction. There's very little room to kneel emotionally without consequence. Intimacy becomes the one place where gravity shifts. Where surrender doesn't cost status, it restores balance, like water finally flowing downhill instead of being forced uphill. Here's a practical way to recognize this in real situations. Notice how different it feels when someone slows down instead of rushing to the main event. That pause isn't hesitation, it's intention. It's a refusal to treat intimacy like a transaction. When surrender is genuine, time stretches, attention sharpens, and connection deepens. You're no longer chasing sensation, you're inhabiting it. This is why attempts to script intimacy so often fall flat. Scripts are about control. Surrender is about trust. And trust can't be manufactured, it has to be felt. When surrender enters the room, something ancient wakes up. Something that knows this isn't about bodies colliding, but about borders dissolving. Here's the part most people miss. Pleasure is loud, but acceptance is lasting. Pleasure sparks the nervous system. Acceptance settles it. You can feel pleasure anywhere, with anyone, under the right conditions. But acceptance, that's rare. That's intimate. That's the moment when you don't feel evaluated, measured, or silently scored. You feel allowed. And for the masculine psyche, that permission hits deeper than any physical sensation ever could. Think of pleasure like firework light, bright, exciting, gone in seconds. Acceptance is more like warmth from a fireplace. It stays. It seeps in. It changes how safe you feel long after the moment ends. This is why a man can walk away from intense pleasure feeling empty, yet feel deeply bonded after a moment where he felt genuinely welcomed. The nervous system remembers safety longer than stimulation. You can see this clearly in everyday behavior. When someone feels accepted, they soften. Their breathing slows, their voice drops, their movements become less performative and more authentic. That's not coincidence. It's biology responding to belonging. The body doesn't need to impress when it feels secure. It only needs to be present. And presence, ironically, makes intimacy far more powerful than effort ever could. Here's something practical you can notice or apply. Acceptance shows up in small, almost invisible ways. No rushing, no checking out mentally, no subtle tension that says, "You owe me now." It's in allowing silence without filling it. It's in staying connected even when nothing dramatic is happening. These moments tell the unconscious, you're safe here. And once that message lands, desire deepens naturally. This is why chasing pleasure alone often leads to repetition without fulfillment. It's like eating sugar when what you need is nourishment. Acceptance feeds something deeper, self-worth, belonging, emotional grounding. And when that need is met, intimacy stops feeling like a performance and starts feeling like home. Most people think vulnerability is what happens after trust is built. In reality, vulnerability is what builds trust. And in intimacy, it often shows up before anyone consciously recognizes it. The body moves first. The psyche follows. What looks like confidence is frequently exposure in disguise. The real offering in intimacy isn't skill, stamina, or technique. It's the willingness to be seen without guarantees. Vulnerability feels risky because it is. It's like stepping onto a bridge before knowing how strong it is. But here's the paradox. The act of stepping forward is what reveals whether the bridge can hold. When someone offers vulnerability, they're saying, "I don't know how you'll receive this, but I'm here anyway." That's not weakness. That's courage, stripped of armor. You can observe this in subtle ways. Notice how someone's attention shifts when they're truly vulnerable. Their movements become less scripted. Their reactions are more responsive, less rehearsed. There's listening instead of anticipating. This is the nervous system dropping defense mode. And defense mode, while useful for survival, suffocates intimacy. Vulnerability is the signal that says the battle is over. Here's a real-world parallel that makes this clearer. Think about conversations where someone admits something difficult. Fear, uncertainty, need. Those moments don't repel people. They pull them closer. Intimacy works the same way. When vulnerability is present, the other person instinctively senses that something real is happening. The space becomes quieter, heavier, more meaningful. This is why attempts to impress rarely create lasting bonds. Impressing is about control. Vulnerability is about truth. And truth, once revealed, changes the emotional terrain completely. When someone offers vulnerability, they're not asking to be fixed or praised. They're asking to be received. There's a reason intimacy stirs emotions that logic can't explain. Beneath conscious desire, something ancient wakes up, an instinct older than language. You feel it as a pull, a gravity, a sense that you're approaching something meaningful, not just stimulating. This isn't about novelty or thrill. It's about returning to a source that once meant safety, nourishment, and existence itself. The body recognizes what the mind struggles to name. This is where Carl Jung becomes impossible to ignore, even without quoting theory. He understood that the unconscious speaks in symbols, not explanations. And intimacy is one of its clearest symbols. The longing here isn't just sexual, it's existential. It's the wish to reconnect with the feminine mystery that represents origin, creation, and continuity. Not to possess it, but to be allowed near it. Think of it like standing at the ocean after a long journey inland. You don't need to analyze the water to feel its pull. Your body already knows. That's how this longing works. It's a return to something vast and uncontrollable, something that humbles without humiliating. In that space, the ego softens. The need to perform fades. What remains is awe, and awe naturally leads to reverence. You can sense this when intimacy slows down instead of escalating, when attention deepens instead of chasing climax, when presence replaces urgency. These moments feel heavier, quieter, more charged. That's not accidental. It's the psyche recognizing a symbolic threshold. Crossing it doesn't promise pleasure. It promises meaning, and meaning, once touched, reshapes desire itself. This is why rejection at this level hurts so deeply. It doesn't feel like a missed experience. It feels like exile, and acceptance feels like coming home. There are needs you don't learn to name, you learn to hide them. For many men, belonging is one of them. Asking to belong feels childish, exposed, almost dangerous. So instead of saying it, the psyche finds another language. Intimacy becomes that language. Not as a demand, but as an offering that quietly says, "Is there room for me here?" This isn't about approval. It's about permission to exist without armor. Belonging is different from being wanted. Want can be conditional. Belonging is stable. It says, you don't have to earn your place every second. When intimacy opens that door, even briefly, something inside relaxes that rarely gets to rest. The shoulders drop, the jaw softens, the mind stops scanning for threat. That's not coincidence. It's the nervous system recognizing home. You can see this play out in small moments. Notice how someone behaves when they feel they belong versus when they're trying to secure their spot. One is fluid, attentive, present. The other is tense, eager, overperforming. Belonging removes the need to prove. And when proof is no longer required, authenticity steps forward naturally, without effort. Think about spaces where you feel you truly belong, a close friend's house, a familiar routine, a place where silence isn't awkward. Now compare that to spaces where you feel tolerated but not rooted. Intimacy can mirror either one. When it offers belonging, it becomes grounding. When it doesn't, it becomes transactional, no matter how intense it looks on the surface. This is why the desire to belong often hides behind desire for closeness. It's safer to express want than need, but the body tells the truth anyway. Most people misunderstand power because they look for it where it's loud. They assume power belongs to the one who initiates, who leads, who acts. But intimacy has a way of rewriting that rule without announcing it. The moment someone offers genuine vulnerability, power doesn't disappear, it relocates. It moves silently to the one who receives. Reception is a form of power few people are taught to recognize. It's easy to take, to demand, to steer. It's much harder to receive without tension, without entitlement, without turning the moment into leverage. When someone receives vulnerability with presence instead of expectation, something profound happens. The dynamic shifts, the offering deepens. Trust grows roots instead of wings. Think of it like gravity. You don't see it working, but everything responds to it. The one who can stay grounded, calm, and open becomes the center of the interaction, not by force, but by steadiness. This is why serenity can feel so disarming. It removes the usual games. You can notice this in everyday interactions too. The person who listens without interrupting often has more influence than the one who talks the most. The one who doesn't rush to define the moment sets the emotional tone. In intimacy, the same rule applies. This kind of power doesn't announce itself, it reveals itself through impact. Technique is comforting because it's measurable. You can improve it, refine it, repeat it. Ritual is unsettling because it's alive. It changes you while you're inside it. This is where most people get stuck. They confuse repetition with depth. They assume that doing the right things guarantees meaning. But intimacy doesn't respond to checklists. Think about the difference between shaking someone's hand and embracing them after a long absence. The motion might be similar, but the meaning couldn't be more different. Ritual transforms ordinary movement into significance. Intimacy works the same way. You can feel this shift when time behaves differently, when moments stretch instead of rush, when there's no anxiety about what comes next. That's ritual territory. Notice whether attention is scattered or focused. Are you thinking about what's next? Or are you fully inside what's happening now? Ritual requires the latter. This is why ritual creates memory, while technique creates repetition. Rejection at this level doesn't land where logic lives. It lands where identity sleeps. When vulnerability is offered and not received, the wound isn't about desire being denied, it's about belonging being refused. Think of it like extending your hand in the dark and touching nothing. Indifference dissolves the ground beneath your feet. You can see the aftermath in subtle shifts: withdrawal, reduced initiative, overcompensation. These aren't random behaviors. They're protective reflexes. When someone pulls away after intimacy, it's often not boredom or manipulation. It's injury. Reception matters more than intensity. A gentle welcome heals more than dramatic passion ever could. Most people think desire is fueled by tension, drama, or urgency. That's the loud version. But there's a quieter force that lasts longer and pulls deeper: serenity. Serenity is seductive because it signals safety, and safety allows depth. Think about people who don't argue loudly, don't need to prove they're right. They carry quiet authority. In intimacy, the same rule applies. Slow down your responses. Let silence exist. Breathe before you act. Serenity doesn't shout, it doesn't perform, it doesn't beg. Now it's your turn to take this out of theory and into life. Don't just understand these ideas, live them. Start noticing where intimacy in your life is driven by performance instead of presence. Ask yourself where you're still trying to prove something instead of simply being there. Slow your pace. Stay present. Choose serenity over control. When vulnerability shows up, hold it. Are you seeking pleasure or are you seeking belonging? Are you using intimacy to validate yourself or to truly connect? What would change if you stopped performing and started allowing? If this perspective stayed with you, subscribe to Mind's Silent Echo and turn on notifications. There's a deeper layer beneath every human experience, and together we uncover it.